A 10-year-old kid was moonwalking on a Chicago street corner when he slipped on ice and scraped his knees badly. But then a black sedan pulled up, and the most famous man in the world quietly stepped out. What happened next became the most beautiful 5 minutes caught on camera that nobody talks about, involving Michael Jackson doing something that reveals the true man behind the legend. But here's what will shock you most. What did Michael whisper to that boy that changed his life forever? December's bitter wind slices through downtown Chicago, carrying with it the scent of roasted chestnuts and the distant sound of holiday shoppers hurrying along Michigan Avenue. Snow dusts the sidewalks in uneven patches, creating a treacherous dance floor for anyone brave enough to perform on the streets. The city pulses with that particular energy of the season. People clutching shopping bags, their breath forming small clouds as they navigate the crowded walkways, most too focused on their destinations to notice the small figure setting up his makeshift stage. Marcus Williams, all of 10 years old, carefully unfolds a piece of cardboard near the corner of State and Madison. His thin jacket offers little protection against the cold, but his eyes burn with determination. The fabric is worn thin at the elbows, and his sneakers have seen better days, but there's a quiet dignity in how he claims his small section of sidewalk. He's been practicing for weeks in his grandmother's cramped apartment, studying every frame of Michael Jackson's Moonwalk on their old television, replaying the DVD until it skipped from overuse. His grandmother needs her medicine, and the pharmacy won't take promises anymore. Marcus takes his position, and despite the chaos around him, there's an undeniable magnetism in his presence. His small frame straightens with purpose as he prepares to transform this concrete stage into something magical. A few passers-by slow their pace, drawn by the sight of this kid who carries himself like he's channeling forces beyond his years. There's an electricity in the air, the kind that precedes all great performances, when the ordinary world holds its breath in anticipation of witnessing something extraordinary. His feet begin to glide backward across the cardboard, defying physics in that miraculous way that made Michael Jackson a legend. The movement is smooth, practiced, each step a testament to hours of dedication in front of a cracked mirror. For a moment, Marcus isn't just a poor kid from the South Side. He's an artist, a dreamer, a vessel for pure magic. The few people who've stopped to watch find themselves mesmerized, their holiday shopping temporarily forgotten, as they witness this young performer pour his heart onto the unforgiving streets. But Chicago's streets show no mercy to dreamers, especially young ones with more talent than resources. His left foot catches the edge where cardboard meets ice-slicked concrete. Time seems to suspend itself as Marcus's arms windmill desperately, trying to regain balance. The crowd that had begun to gather watches in slow motion as the boy crashes to the pavement, his knees taking the brunt of the fall. The sound of impact echoes off the surrounding buildings, a harsh percussion that breaks the spell of his performance. The cardboard skitters away in the wind like a broken dream, tumbling past expensive shoes and designer handbags. Pain shoots through his legs, but it's the humiliation that cuts deeper. The few people who had stopped to watch shake their heads and continue on their way, their brief moment of wonder replaced by the practical concerns of their own lives. Someone mutters about kids being more careful. Another person complains about blocking the sidewalk. A businessman steps around him with visible irritation, checking his watch as if Marcus's pain is somehow inconveniencing his schedule. Marcus sits there on the cold concrete, watching his hat blow away with the few coins he'd managed to collect before his fall. The taste of blood fills his mouth from where he bit his tongue during the impact. His knees throb through the holes in his jeans, and he can feel the sting of scraped skin against the winter air. The magic that had briefly transformed this corner into a stage has evaporated, leaving only a hurt child and the indifferent rhythm of urban life. Around him, the city maintains its relentless pace, indifferent to one small boy's shattered moment. Hurried footsteps create their familiar percussion on the sidewalk. Car horns honk in the distance. Life moves forward as if nothing remarkable had just been attempted and lost. But from within a black sedan idling at the curb, someone watches, someone who recognizes the poetry in both triumph and failure. Behind its tinted windows sits a figure who understands this dance between dreams and reality. The engine purrs quietly, almost respectfully, as if waiting for the right moment to reveal its secrets. Steam rises from the exhaust in gentle clouds, and for just an instant, everything feels suspended, as if the universe itself is holding its breath, preparing for something extraordinary to unfold on this ordinary Chicago street corner where dreams collide with reality. Inside the sedan, Michael Jackson sits in shadow, his fedora pulled low over eyes that have seen too much of the world's contradictions. The leather seat cradles a body that's been pushed to its limits. Months of comeback rehearsals and preparation have left him physically drained and emotionally raw, caught between the hope of redemption and the exhaustion of living under constant scrutiny. His gloved hands rest in his lap, fingers unconsciously tapping out rhythms that exist only in his mind, private melodies that will never see the light of stage or studio. From behind tinted glass, he watches the boy on the ground, and a familiar ache spreads through his chest with recognition that goes beyond mere sympathy. The irony isn't lost on him, and Michael has always been acutely aware of irony's cruel poetry. Here he is, the man who made the moonwalk famous, who transformed a simple dance move into a cultural phenomenon, watching a child fall while attempting the very move that helped define Michael's legacy. But it's more than professional recognition. In Marcus's crumpled form, Michael sees echoes of his own childhood, the pressure to perform when your body aches, the weight of others' expectations pressing down like a physical force, the crushing reality that sometimes raw talent isn't enough to protect you from the world's indifference and cruelty. The bodyguard shifts nervously in the front seat, checking his watch with the practiced anxiety of someone whose job depends on keeping schedules. They're already running late for a meeting with his lawyers about the mounting pressures surrounding his planned comeback, the endless negotiations that seem to multiply with each attempt at redemption. The promise of his comeback should feel like vindication, but instead it feels like another chain around his neck, another expectation to exceed what should be impossible to surpass. Every public appearance becomes a spectacle where he's expected to be superhuman. Every private moment gets dissected by strangers who think they own pieces of his soul simply because they've purchased his records. Success, which promised freedom, has become another kind of prison. When had he last simply existed without the burden of performance, without the constant weight of being Michael Jackson crushing down on his shoulders like a mantle made of lead? Even now, sitting in this car, he's playing a role, the mysterious celebrity, the untouchable icon traveling through the world but never quite participating in it. The glass that protects him also isolates him, creating a barrier between his heart and the very people his music is meant to touch. But watching this boy, really watching him, seeing past the performance to the pure intention beneath, Michael feels an emotion he hasn't experienced in months. Genuine emotion that isn't calculated or choreographed for maximum effect. The kid had been good, really good, with a natural fluidity that can't be taught. Marcus's movements suggested hours of solitary practice, the kind of dedication that Michael recognizes in his own bones because he lived it, breathed it, sacrificed his childhood to it. This wasn't some casual imitation performed for pocket change. This was a young artist trying to channel beauty and purity in a world that seems determined to crush such attempts beneath the weight of practicality and adult cynicism. The lawyers can wait. The meetings can be rescheduled. The careful machinery of his career can pause for a few minutes. Michael's hand moves to the door handle, and his security team immediately tenses with the reflexive alertness of professionals who know their client's unpredictable heart. They recognize that expression, the same look he gets when he's about to make a decision that will complicate everyone's carefully laid plans, when the human being inside the superstar breaks free from the constraints of image management and insurance policies. His publicist would have a heart attack if she knew what he was contemplating. The insurance company would revoke his policy if they could see him now, ready to step into an uncontrolled public space where anything could happen. But Michael Jackson, the man behind the myth, the child who grew up too fast and never stopped believing in magic, doesn't care about any of that corporate machinery right now. From his vantage point, he watches Marcus struggle to his feet, only to sit back down when pain shoots through his scraped knees. The boy's face crumples, not from physical hurt, but from the deeper recognition that dreams can shatter as easily as skin against concrete, that the world doesn't pause to acknowledge effort or intention when they collide with harsh reality. Michael knows that feeling intimately. He's carried it with him since he was younger than Marcus, performing in smoky clubs when he should have been playing with toys, learning that applause and approval come with a price that children shouldn't have to pay. The city continues its rush around them both, unaware that history is about to pivot on this single moment of human connection, this intersection of fame and vulnerability on a cold Chicago street corner. Michael takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of his fame like armor he's about to shed, and reaches for the door handle with quiet certainty. The soft click of the car door opening somehow cuts through the urban symphony of honking horns and shuffling feet. Michael steps onto the sidewalk, and for a moment, the world doesn't notice. He's just another figure in dark clothing moving through the afternoon crowd. But his presence, how he carries himself, the deliberate precision of his movements, begins to register in people's peripheral vision like a frequency only the soul can hear. Marcus is still sitting on the cold concrete, examining his scraped knees through the holes in his jeans, when a pair of polished black shoes appears in his field of vision. The boy looks up slowly, expecting another adult ready to lecture him about blocking the sidewalk or being more careful. Instead, he finds himself staring into the most famous face in the world. For a heartbeat, neither of them moves. Michael crouches down until they're at eye level, his knees touching the same cold surface that just humbled the young performer. Up close, Marcus can see the exhaustion etched in Michael's features, the weight of carrying the world's expectations written in the slight tremor of his hands. But there's also a gentleness there that cameras never quite capture, a vulnerability that fame hasn't managed to steal. "You okay, young man?" Michael's voice is softer than it sounds on the radio, carrying none of the manufactured perfection of his recordings. It's just a man asking after a boy who's hurt, and somehow that makes everything more surreal. The recognition spreads through the crowd like ripples in still water. A woman dropping her shopping bags. A businessman stopping mid-stride, his phone call forgotten. Children tugging at their parents' coats, pointing with wide eyes. The whispers begin as a low hum that grows steadily louder. Is that? Oh my God, it's really him. Michael Jackson is here. But Michael's attention remains fixed on Marcus, creating an island of intimacy in an ocean of chaos. Marcus tries to speak but only manages to nod, his voice stolen by the impossibility of the moment. Here is his hero, the man whose moves he's studied with religious devotion, kneeling beside him on a Chicago sidewalk like it's the most natural thing in the world. People gather in a loose circle around them. A few people hold up cell phones and digital cameras, recording what would become legendary footage that somehow never made it to the mainstream media. Michael's security team emerges from the sedan, their faces tense with the nightmare of crowd control, but Michael waves them back with a slight gesture. This moment belongs to him and the boy, not to the machinery of fame that usually dictates his every interaction. "I saw you dancing," Michael continues, his voice steady despite the growing commotion around them. "You've got real talent. That moonwalk, you've been practicing." It's not a question, but a statement of recognition from one artist to another. Marcus's eyes fill with tears that have nothing to do with his scraped knees and everything to do with being seen, really seen, by someone who understands the language of movement and dreams. Voices grow bolder, calling out his name, hands reaching toward them. The protective bubble around their conversation grows thinner by the second, but neither Michael nor Marcus seems aware of anything beyond their shared moment of connection on the winter street. Michael extends his hand, the famous gloved hand that has touched millions of hearts through television screens, and Marcus takes it without hesitation. Onlookers fall silent as the king of pop helps a street kid to his feet, their movements synchronized like a carefully rehearsed dance. But this isn't performance. This is communion, far more precious and rare. "Show me that moonwalk again," Michael says quietly, his words meant only for Marcus despite the dozens of ears straining to catch every syllable. "But this time, watch your footing." His smile carries the warmth of understanding, the recognition of shared struggle wrapped in gentle encouragement. They move away from the icy patch toward a safer section of sidewalk, and the crowd parts like a curtain, creating a small performance space. Marcus wipes his eyes with the back of his sleeve, his embarrassment melting away under Michael's patient gaze. Marcus takes his position, his small frame straightening with renewed purpose. What follows is magic of the purest kind. Marcus begins his moonwalk, his feet gliding backward across the concrete, with improved confidence. But this time he's not alone. Michael mirrors his movements, their feet moving in perfect synchronization, master and student locked in a dance that transcends the boundary between legend and reality. Everyone watches in stunned silence as two generations of dreamers share the language that needs no words. Michael's movements are fluid, effortless, each step a reminder of why he became a global icon. But he keeps pace with Marcus, never overshadowing the boy's performance, instead lifting it up through the simple act of participating. Together they glide across the sidewalk, and for those magical seconds, Marcus isn't just imitating Michael Jackson, he's dancing with him. When they finish, the silence stretches for a heartbeat before erupting into spontaneous applause. Michael places his hand on Marcus's shoulder and draws him close, their heads nearly touching as he whispers words meant for no one else. Onlookers strain to hear but catch nothing. Yet Marcus's face transforms as if he's received the most precious gift, his eyes widening with wonder and quiet hope. Without fanfare, Michael reaches into his jacket and withdraws several folded bills, pressing them into Marcus's palm along with a small piece of paper. The transaction happens so quickly that most onlookers miss it, but Marcus clutches both items against his chest like sacred relics. "Never stop dancing," Michael says, his voice carrying across the crowd. "People need your light." Then, as suddenly as he appeared, Michael Jackson melts back into his sedan. The engine purrs to life, and the black car disappears into Chicago traffic, leaving behind a crowd of witnesses and one transformed boy standing on a street corner. Years later, Marcus would tell his own students about that December afternoon in 2008, about the moment when kindness wore a sequined glove and humility rode in a limousine. The paper Michael gave him contained 7 simple words. "The stage is wherever your heart is." Those words would guide Marcus through a career as a dance instructor, where he'd teach countless children that greatness isn't about never falling. It's about having the courage to get back up and the grace to help others do the same.